Everyone, welcome back to my channel. It's True Crime with Jess Rose. I'm here every Thursday with stories you might not have heard of. Obviously, if you've got any requests, you can let me know. I'm also over on the TikTok, which is Jess Rose 5472. If you'd like to join my Patreon, it's patreon.com/Jess Rose 5472. Or you could just watch. I am live on a Thursday, but if you're watching this now, it's the pre-recorded, so you won't have to hear me rambling. And as I mentioned, if you have watched any other stories of mine, it'll say that I'm here on a Tuesday and Thursday. I have reduced it down just to a Thursday for a little while. But yeah, that's it. So I'm going to get on with the story now. So thank you all so much. And just a little heads up. It is, it's an awful story. So just a little heads up. If I don't even know what to say. I don't even know what more to say to you. If you're on a true crime channel, that's what you're expecting. So let's go and just ignore the inside out top. Let's ignore that. We're going to ignore that. Okay. So it's the brutal, as the title says, the Brutal Corriann Cervantes Story. Okay. Now, Corriann Shine Cervantes Waters, born on the 2nd of April 1998 in San Jose, California. All right. To her mum, Tiffany Waters, dad, Corey Cervantes. She had one brother and one sister. Her brother is Corey Jr., her sister is Cheyenne. Now, a little bit about Corriann. Beautiful looking girl. Beautiful, beautiful looking girl. Okay. Sorry. Beautiful girl, big blue eyes, absolutely gorgeous. Said that she was kind, sweet, very outgoing, very kind to her friends. Huge family, a huge family. She lots of aunts, uncles, very close to her grandmother. Okay, now there is, I don't know if it's confusion. But in some places I've seen that the parents were divorced. Other places I've seen that they weren't. Now, I'm going to tell you what I've heard, okay? Because I had all my notes ready, and then I read something today and it was changing. Now, it's neither here nor there. It's just a little of the backstory. That's all it is, okay? Now, what I'd researched was that the parents had got divorced, but the dad had moved to Texas with the kids, okay? But the family had kind of got to him and says, look, you know, Tiffany's not doing very well, which is obviously Corriann's mom. She's not doing very well. Could you not give it another go? You know, if she's around her kids and she's around you, you know, she'll just do much better. I don't know. I think it might have been a mental health issue, but don't hold me to it. And he agreed. Okay. So, like I say, the research that I've done, it would appear that Tiffany was living in the home with Corey, who's the dad, and the 3 kids. Okay. Corriann being one of them. So, like I say, neither really here nor there, but that's what I've picked up. Okay. Now, as Corriann got to her teenage years, as I mentioned, they're now living in Houston, Texas. Okay. She had a love for swimming. She loved music, singing. She was in the choir, I believe. She loved her friends. She loved her family. As I mentioned, big family, grandparents, aunts, uncles, very, very close. Her friends consisted of a lot of her family members, but she also had her own group of friends too, okay? Now, she was originally going to Clear Lake High School, which is the area in Houston, Texas they were living, a place called Clear Lake, okay? And that was the high school she was going to. I think she may have needed a bit of extra help, so she then went to Clear Path Alternative School. Okay. She was doing okay. It was just for kids that needed that bit of extra help. I don't know if it was troubled children. I'm not too sure, but definitely kids who needed just a little bit of extra help, okay? Now, due to the dad being at work, and this is what I mean with the mum, I don't know where the mum comes into play. I don't know if she was at work. Some people have said that she wasn't even living with them, okay? But we know that Corriann's grandmother would bring Corriann to and from school, okay? And I'm assuming her siblings, okay? So this is what I mean. Very, very close-knit family, all right? So now we're going to get to Tuesday, the 4th of February, 2014, okay? And at this point in time, Corriann is 15, okay? Now, what had happened is Corriann went to school that day, okay? And her dad was waiting for her when she got home. And he asked her, how was school today? She said, yeah, it was good. How was school today? Yeah, it was okay. She was lying. He knew she hadn't been in school, basically. I don't know if the school had called her. I don't think she was stupid enough not to be there when the grandmother was set to pick her up. But anyway, her and her mum, again, this is what I mean about her mum. Her and her mum had been clashing slightly. The dad had said it was sort of like a love-hate relationship. They got on sometimes, they didn't at other times. He was kind of running in between them. He was also annoyed that she was missing school. So on this evening, it causes a bit of an argument. And, you know, Corriann goes to her room. He says, you're grounded, you're not going out, you will be going to school tomorrow. You know, typical teenage kind of bickers with the family, if you can imagine it. You know, it's not great that she wasn't going into school. I don't know if that was a regular occurrence, but this is what caused that argument that evening. All right. Now, Tiffany, again, I'm not going to keep replacing it with, I'm not sure if she was there. Tiffany, the mum, she wanted Corey, the dad, so Corey Senior, to go to the shop for her, a Kroger's. I believe it's a supermarket of some sort. She wanted him to go to Kroger's for her, and he was like, no, I don't want to leave the house, because he had a feeling that Corriann was going to try and sneak out. Again, typical teenager. And Tiffany keeps on pushing him. She's like, I need this. I need you to go and get this for me. So in the end, he gives in and he's like, okay, all right, okay, I'll go. So he goes to Kroger's for her. Now, I believe Tiffany was supposed to keep an eye on her daughter. As it happened, when Corey Senior gets home and he goes into Corriann's room, she's not there. She's not there. And she snuck out. Okay? Now, it said that he wasn't overly worried. He was annoyed, but he wasn't overly worried. You know, where they lived, a lot of people knew each other. He wasn't overly concerned. He thought, you know, let her go and blow off steam or whatever with her friends or whatever else. And I'll get her in the morning or after school the next day, kind of thing. So he does wait for the evening, thinking, you know, hoping she comes back that evening. She doesn't. All right. So when she doesn't come back, of course he's concerned, but like I say, it wasn't a frantic concern at that moment in time. He presumed she stopped at her friend's, she'll go into school, and her grandmother will pick her up, bring her home, and he can kind of have her when she comes back, you know. So Wednesday, the 5th of February, 2014. So, okay, it's the next day now. And he gets a call from his mom, Corriann's grandmother. And she's like, look, I'm at the school. Corriann's not here. And now he's getting worried. Now he's like, well, she wouldn't have done that. You know, he's concerned now. Like I say, she was a nice girl. She really was. It was just teenage angst. And he knew that wasn't right. All right? So he starts calling around family members. They start trying to get in touch with her. He's phoning her phone. The family members are on Facebook, Snapchat. You know, she was a typical teenager. She was on social media all the time, but her social media had gone very quiet. She wasn't answering the phone. No one had seen her. And now the family are like, and as I mentioned, she's very close to her family, so they're all involved. And they're like, we're going to have to call 911. So that early evening, they call 911. Okay? So police come out, take the details. Obviously, she's only 15. You know, her family insists she wouldn't have run away. You know, we need to find her. So the police begin searching, begin asking questions. There's a lot of apartment complexes around the area. No one's seen her. No one's heard from her. And the family are getting really, really concerned now. And days start to go by. Days. I can't imagine. I know when I do these stories, I do say I can't imagine how the parents must feel when you don't know where your child is. And it must just be awful. Or the words don't quite, I'm not using the right words to explain how devastating it must be. Okay, so we get to Saturday now. Okay, so remember when the argument happened with her dad, that was on the Tuesday. Okay, Tuesday evening. All right, the Wednesday they realise she hasn't been in school, and they call the police. We're now on Saturday, early hours of the morning. Okay, and there's a lad called Arturo. Arturo, I hope I'm pronouncing that guy. And it's about 4 a.m. All right. Now, what it is, Arturo, he's been at his niece's since quinceanera. Oh, I'm butchering that. I know I am. But that's where he's been. And he gets home and stuff. And, you know, a lot of the kids around there, you know, smoke weed. And, you know, they don't really get into a lot of trouble around there. But he's like, oh, I can't sleep. So he goes out of his own apartment. And the apartment complex he's living in, okay, I think it's called, bear with me, I've written it further along, but if I tell you now, it's called the Bays apartment complex. And he comes out of his apartment, and if you imagine, it's the building, it's got apartments along the bottom, then you go up the stairs, and then you've got apartments, but they're masonettes. I don't know if Americans call them duplexes, because there's an upstairs. It's not a flat where everything, or an apartment where everything's on the ground floor. There is an upstairs in these. So he comes out of his, and he goes up the outside of the stairs, and as you go up onto the second balcony, if you like, where you've got all the apartment doors, front doors, there's one there that's vacant. It's a vacant apartment. And what it is, a lot of the young teenagers from around the area use this apartment, smoke weed, drink alcohol, play music. You know, they've got to be fairly quiet because there's people living in the apartments either side of this particular one. But, you know, there's no electric, there's no running water in there. It's you know, they've not made it a very nice place in there as teenagers, you can imagine. But it's where they all go. So he heads there. So as he walks in now, basically, normally you would have to kind of climb up and go through a sliding door of the second floor of this apartment. But he notices the front door is open, all right? So he walks in there. And when I say that, it's because I'm presuming maybe the landlord or apartment complex maintenance guy probably has to go back and lock the door a lot, so they find other ways into it. But when he goes there, it's open, okay? Remember, at 4 o'clock in the morning, he walks in. It's very dark. And he makes his way in, and it brings him into the living room of this apartment. And as he gets to that point, now remember it's dark, so he's trying to let his eyes adjust to the darkness and stuff. And he notices something on the living room floor. And he walks over to it. And he freaks out. He absolutely freaks out. And he runs out of the apartment. Okay? And he runs a couple of doors down. And he bangs on the door. Now, I'm assuming maybe he didn't want to go back to his own apartment because his parents were sick. Maybe he shouldn't have been out. I don't know. But he runs a few doors down, knocks on. And living in that apartment of where he knocks on is a couple of people, blokes he knows. I wouldn't say they were his friends because of the age gap, but he knew them. And these two guys, they were brothers, happened to be up. They were playing computer games. And they were like, it's 4 o'clock in the morning. What are you doing? He goes, you've got to help. You've got to help. She's on the floor. And he's not making a lot of sense to these brothers. And apparently these brothers were, they were called like Duck Dynasty, which is a program because they've got these beards, and one of them's a bloke from the military. So, you know, they're not scared. They're baffled by what's going on. So they follow him to this vacant apartment a few doors down. And he waits outside. He can't go back in. He's shaking. He's very nervous. And they're like, okay, all right, wait there, we'll go in. And they go in. And what he'd actually seen, they bring a flashlight, because obviously there's no electric in here. And they're putting this flashlight around. He's like, in the living room. And when they go in and they put the flashlight on the floor, they see what they believe is a woman who is naked from the waist down, okay, covered in blood. In fact, as they're putting the flashlight around, they notice there's blood everywhere, okay? And the one thing they notice, it doesn't look like she's got any eyes. In fact, she hasn't got a face anymore, okay? Now, no one recognised this woman, okay, which is what they believe they're looking at. And as I mentioned, there is blood absolutely everywhere. So these brothers call 911, they call the police. So the police turn up quite quickly and they come in, and as I mentioned, the blood is horrific in there. It's all in that living room. Also in that room is I've heard it called a closet, cupboard. It's an most people have them. You either have them in your hallway, I've got one in my living room, and it's a cupboard that is under your stairs. So normally the cupboard slopes, okay, so normally as you walk in, you could probably stand up and then it slopes down. Okay, so there's one of those cupboards in there. They notice that that's open and there's blood in there as well. They notice around this woman is a lot of broken porcelain, like shards and big chunks of porcelain. Okay. As I mentioned, she's naked from the waist down. She's got a Rob Zombie t-shirt on. Okay, now Rob Zombie, I've watched a film. Now I presume he's a director. Now I don't know if he's also a music artist as well. I'm not too sure, because I knew Rob Zombie as a director for a film I watched. It was a up-to-date Halloween film, so I'm not too sure if that was based. But this woman's got this Rob Zombie t-shirt on with a bra over it. Okay. And she's also got, because, as I'd said, I think I've said a couple of times, naked from the waist down, they notice that she has 2 poles inserted into her. She's quite obviously deceased because her face is completely destroyed. Okay. They believe this woman to be in her 30s, all right? but there was no ID. There was no ID around, so they did not know who this woman was. Okay, and they had to identify her by her dental records, right? So when they do that and the results come back, they realise it's Corriann. It's not a woman in her 30s. It's not a woman at all. It's a 15-year-old child. Okay? So they get in touch with the family, who are beyond devastated. I mean, as I mentioned, she was so close to her family. They were a very, very close-knit family. And they are beside themselves, okay? Now, the police themselves believed that this could possibly have been part of a satanic ritual, all right? And the reason for that is because there was a couple of 666 markings carved into doors in the apartment, but also carved into Corriann's stomach was an upside down cross. Okay. So a vigil is held at that Bay apartment site, okay, with all her family and friends. I just can't imagine how you wouldn't have been able to see her. You wouldn't have even been able to go and see her. And I think what's really, really heartbreaking is that the last time her dad saw her was during an argument. Absolutely awful. So there's an autopsy done on Corriann, okay, which shows that she had been stabbed over 60 times, 60, with what they believe is a screwdriver. 60 times. It looked like her eyes, her one eye had been tried to be gouged out, and there was still a hook in her eye that had gone through to the other one. Okay. She'd been sexually assaulted. There was porcelain embedded into her face and her skull. In fact, there were so many injuries to this child that the coroner couldn't pinpoint what had actually killed her. There was just so many injuries to her. Okay, now the police are out there and they're asking questions, and at the beginning no one knows anything, or no one's saying anything, should I say, but they've got no lead. The amount of blood that Corriann had lost in that apartment had diluted any other DNA that was there. They couldn't pick up any other DNA there because she'd lost so much blood. So they were having real trouble, real trouble, until a call is made. Now, there was a young girl who had been having trouble at school, okay? And a policeman had been really kind to her and had given her like a little push with her and her mum, and just basically said, get your head down, you know, it's only a few years, it will do you the world of good, you know, you're a bright girl, you know, get your head down, stay in school, this kind of talk with her. And he was the only person she could think that she needed to talk to at this moment. So eventually she gets in touch with this police officer and she says, look, my baby daddy, okay, I hate the saying, but my baby daddy, the father of my child, his name is Jose Reyes. He's 17. And I overheard him talking to his sister. And he had told his sister that him and his friend had recently killed a girl. Okay? So if you're following, this young girl who used to be in a relationship with Jose, okay, she happened to be at his sister's. I don't know. Obviously, they share a child together, so whether there was visiting or what, but she was in the hallway and she heard him telling his sister that he'd done this with someone else. Okay. Now, because they all had heard about Corriann at this time, like I say, that, you know, they all kind of went to the same high schools together and they all live in the same area. It's quite a small area. So it can only be, as far as she's concerned, Corriann that he's talking about. So on the 9th of February 2014, okay, the police, they get a warrant for Jose and they wait until early hours. So they actually break into his family home while he's in bed and they go into his bedroom, arrest him to bring him in. Well, bring him in for questioning, okay? And they notice while they're in his bedroom, as they're getting it, like I say, he was in bed, he was sleeping like a baby. They notice that there's carvings and writings, 666, pentagrams, upside down crosses. So straight away it's like, not looking good for you, Jose, is it? So they bring him in, okay, and they start talking to him, and they're quite surprised at just how chatty this lad is with them. And they say, look, can we have your phone? And he hands over his phone. He says he'll give a DNA check. You know, he's very compliant with them. And eventually he starts telling them things about what happened on the 4th/5th of February 2014. But they hadn't read him his Miranda rights. So everything he was saying was neither here nor there. They couldn't do anything with what he was saying to them. I don't know why. I don't know how that happened. Why that happened, I have no idea. Okay? But what they found on his phone were 3 pictures. Okay? There was more, but I'm just letting you know there was 3 pictures on there. All right? And in these pictures is Jose, Corriann, and another friend called Victor. Now, Victor Alice is 16, okay, and he's in these pictures. And they're date stamped from the 4th of February 2014, late in the evening. It was between 10 and 11 o'clock, okay? And in these pictures, they're quite obviously sexual. And it shows Jose behind Corriann, and Corriann with her head in Victor's lap. Okay? And there's 3 of these photos. All right? So he obviously puts the 3 of them together on the night she doesn't come home. Okay? So, as I mentioned, he is talking to them and he's telling them bits of their evening, but they haven't read him his Miranda rights. But he has thrown Victor into the mix. So on the 10th of February 2014, so the next day, they pick up Victor. Okay? Now, watch this interrogation. It's, if after this you want to go and watch it, I'll tell you, obviously, what happened. And then go and watch the interrogation and see just how calm. This lad's 16 years old. But just see how calm and it always surprises me when I see a confessional interrogation. Just there's nothing. There's nothing. Okay. So, as I mentioned, they bring him in, they're giving, and now there's 3 policemen in that room with him as well. Not 1 or 2, there's 3 in there with him. Okay. And what they say to him, listen, Jose's told us everything. You might as well tell us what happened. We know you were there. You killed Corriann along with Jose. You need to tell us. And he was like, no, I don't know what you're on about. I had seen her, but we left her. She was really drunk. We left her, and I went home. I don't know what you're talking about. He lasts all of 18 minutes. That's as long as he lasts, 18 minutes. And then he begins to talk. Okay, so now I'm going to bring you back to the 4th of February 2014. Okay, so the week previous. Now, Victor, Jose, and Corriann. Victor and Corriann knew each other from school. They'd gone to the same high school, and then they ended up going to the same alternative school as well. I think Corriann was there first, and then Victor went. Now, Jose, they knew from around the area. I believe there was a lot of them that knew each other. All right. So they all met on that evening of the 4th. Okay. And let me just stop for a second to introduce a woman called Candy. Now, apparently that's not her real name. I don't know why it's been, well, I kind of get why it's been withheld. All right. But her name's Candy. All right. And she's an older lady. Again, can't find her age. If it's out there, I haven't been able to find it, all right? But she's an older lady who says that she met Victor and Jose a few weeks previous, months even. And she also lived in those Bay apartments. But the Bay apartment complex. She also lived there where the vacant one was. Okay, it's quite a big complex. All right, and she was in the laundry room on this one particular evening, months previous. Okay, and in there she happened to notice 2 young lads who we know as Jose and Victor. Okay, now they're 16 and 17. They are young, and she says that they look cold. It was late. One needed a charger for his phone, and she invited him to her apartment. Okay, now as far as I know, there was nothing sexual involved, but she became one of those houses that we all know. There was always that adult who entertained the teenagers round any area that we know where there's groups of teenagers. There's always that one adult. Normally it's a male. It's quite unusual that it's a female, but she was that person, and she would let them come in, smoke weed, do Xanax. There's a thing called bars and Molly and alcohol. She'd supply them the alcohol. So she was a very good role model. I've got to say, she was fab. And Corriann got to know this Candy, so they all knew her. And that was the place they'd go, as well as this vacant apartment. Maybe when she wasn't in, or, she didn't want them in her apartment. Okay, so, as I mentioned, Victor, Jose, and Corriann all meet up, and they go to Candy's apartment. Now, before they'd got there, they'd all popped a Xanax. I've never taken Xanax. I don't know what the effect is. But Corriann had never tried it before, and it had a little bit, of a severe effect on her. So by the time she got to Candy's, she was quite wobbly. Add drink and weed into it as the night's going on. Don't forget, she's had this row with her dad. She's determined she's not going home. She's talked to Candy about it. So when Candy sees the state of this young girl, don't forget Corriann's only 15. Candy's like, look, do you want to stay here this evening? And Corriann's like, yeah, okay. She falls asleep on the sofa. Then she goes and lies on Candy's bed. She's sort of lying on it with her legs hanging off. That's where she is. And Candy thinks, okay, all right, she can stop the night. She'll go home tomorrow. Jose isn't happy about this. And we find out why soon enough, but he's not happy about this. He wants her out of there. And so Jose and Victor go into Candy's bedroom and close the door. She's not happy about that. Plus, she's got a comatose teenage girl in there, so she's kind of banging on the door and she's like, get out. So when the door opens, Victor and Jose are stood there, but so's Corriann. And she's like, what are you doing? And she goes, oh, I'm going to go to... And she names another friend of hers. And she's like, Candy's like, are you sure? You know, you can stay here. She can see how wobbly she is. She's not quite there. And she's like, no, I'm going to go there. And Jose and Victor are like, we'll walk her. Now, they're intoxicated too. Obviously not to Corriann's degree. But this is a grown woman. Why didn't she walk Corriann to this friend's house? Why didn't she ensure that she made it there? Or insist, you're not leaving. You try and leave, I'm going to get your dad. Okay? You're not with it. Go and lie down, go and sleep it off. Kick them two lads out. And or walk her to her friends. She didn't do any of it. And the last she saw of Corriann was her practically being carried down her steps, flanked by Victor and Jose. Also with them was one of Victor's cousins who'd come round there. So she's flanked by these two lads, but there's actually 3 lads with her. And this girl can't walk. She can't put one foot in front of the other. She's completely inebriated. But no, as a grown woman, mind you, why should we believe that she would have stopped her from going with these lads when she was the one allowing lads and girls to come in and get that messed up in her apartment in the first place? So that was the last time she sees Corriann. She thinks she's gone to her friends. She kind of locks up and she goes to bed. Okay. Now Victor, Jose, and Victor's cousin, along with Corriann. Now remember, this vacant apartment, which is where they're bringing her, is on the 2nd floor. Remember? So they have to get her up those stairs, which they do. And I don't even know if the door was open at that point. Did they have to get her through one of the windows, which is how they would get through into this apartment? I think it was the door, because if you remember that other lad, Arturo, he walked in the door, didn't he? So they go into the apartment. Now, Victor's cousin believed they were all going to carry on partying, smoke some weed, maybe have a drink. He thinks that's why they're going there. What he quickly realises is this isn't that. This is more sexual than he wants any part of. He can see that Corriann's really not capable of this being a consensual, intimate moment, and he wants no part of it. So Victor's cousin leaves. So now in this abandoned, not abandoned, but vacant apartment is Jose, Victor, and Corriann. So they go into that cupboard under the stairs, and they call it hotboxing. So there's no what's the word? Vents or anything, and it apparently makes you high a bit more when you're smoking weed. Okay, so they're hotboxing in this understairs cupboard, right? But very, very, very quickly, it becomes sexual. And as we know with the photos that were found on Jose's phone, it begins with Jose being behind Corriann and her giving oral sex to Victor. Okay. Now, from what I've pieced together, I believe that it was anal sex with Jose. And the reason I say that is because then they tried to switch. Okay? And Corriann's, no. Where his his bits have just been. She doesn't want that in her mouth. And they get quite rough with her. And so she bites down on Jose's penis, okay, while this moment's going on. And don't remember, it's Victor telling this story, all right? And he says, now don't forget, he is behind Corriann at this moment, living his best life. And he notices that Jose lifts something up and smashes her over the head. And what it was a bit of broken porcelain. It was an ashtray that people there were using, but it wasn't an actual ashtray. It was like a bit of broken porcelain that was being used in an ashtray. And he hits her over the head with it because she's bit him. But he doesn't hit her once. He hits her a number of times, which causes her head to split. It's bleeding. And she looks up, but it said that she's kind of turning and she's looking at Victor though, and she's saying, why are you doing this to me? And he's like, he was confused because he's like, it's not me, it was him. And her head's bleeding, and in that, so if you imagine the slope of the stairs where she's lifted her head, there's actually a blood, you can see all the crime scene photos, but there's actually a blood mark where her head's hit the slope. There's blood splatter other places in there, but there. Okay, so after he's done this and he hits her a couple of times, Jose, they come out of the cupboard and lock her in there, and there's a stove in there, and they push it up against the door while they both decide what they want to do with her now. Okay, so it's no longer sexual. It's no longer sexual anymore. Now they want to decide what they want to do with her. Eventually, they move the cooker from the front of the door, and she tries to run. She tries to run away, and they drag her back. Okay? And Jose just begins beating her. Okay? He really does. He just begins beating her. All right? And then they find rods. Now, if you've got blinds in your home, a lot of them don't have the string anymore because of the choking hazard for children. It's a rod now, and you can pull it across and you can open and close your blinds with this rod. And they begin beating her. Those rods are iron because there's blinds in this apartment. They begin beating her with this rod. Okay. Then Victor, and he actually does a reconstruction of it in his interrogation. She's down on her knees and he comes behind her and he wraps his belt round her neck. But he says that when she started turning blue, he panicked, so he undone the belt. Now, that's what Victor claims his input was, really. He says he was sexually involved, and he did put the belt around her neck because he was scared of Jose, and Jose told him he had to do it. Okay? So they continue to beat her, and then when the strangulation didn't work, Jose lifts. So in your toilet on the cistern, if you lift that up, you know, a lot of the times, you know, if you need to fix or you want to put a cleaner in or anything, but that comes off. Well, there was a broken big section of the top of the cistern that was in that living room. Remember I said there was part of porcelain in the stair cupboard as well. Now, it had obviously already been broken previously, but there was a big chunk of it. And Victor says Jose raised it and just started beating her over the head with this porcelain. She obviously collapsed to the floor. She's still alive. And then Jose decides he wants to gouge her eye out. And he uses the rod that he's been beating her with and the hook on the end to gouge in one of her eyes, and it comes through. She's still alive. They then insert 2 more curtain rods into her. Okay. So far, it goes up into her abdomen and nearly reaches her chest cavity. He actually goes on to say, Jose does, because he was very proud of what he did. He was very proud of the work that he did. And he says he was trying to break. He wanted to feel. He did it so far into her, he could feel her break. She's still alive. Okay? And then Jose begins stabbing her over and over and over again with the screwdriver. Jugular, face, chest, all the way through to her spine. And continued stabbing her even after she died. Her body just couldn't take anymore. It's horrific that she was alive for everything I've just told you. And then just to desecrate her just one more, or just a little bit more, Jose then carved the upside down cross onto her stomach, saying that they'd sold their souls to the devil and the devil had told him to do it. That poor girl. And they believed through her, the blood loss and the blood flow, that she'd been alive, as I've mentioned, right up until near the end. The agony, I can't. These were a 16 and 17-year-old lad doing it to a 15-year-old girl. And they weren't big lads. You know, they say Jose, he was a good-looking boy. Can't see it myself, gotta be honest. You know, Victor himself, he was quite, he had no IQ of 85. He'd done the 9th grade twice. That's why he'd been sent to, you know, this alternative school. He was more of a follower. Jose saw himself as this leader. So Victor was kind of, you know, he told the police, yes, I did use the belt, but for everything else, I kind of stood back. And the police are like, so you watched while he did all of that to your friend? She was your friend. She was both of your friends. And you watched while he did all of that to her. Now, we can either believe that or not. We can believe that it was both of them, or he used the belt. And like I say, you see him do the example with an actual belt on the detective. You know, so we know he did do that part. And did he stand back after that and everything was done? But the coroner had said the amount of damage to this girl, it was quite obvious before they even knew who she was, that it was more than one person had done this to her. She was destroyed. They destroyed her for nothing. For nothing. Because she bit down. But was it always on the cards? I don't know. Okay. So when obviously they were asking Victor, you know, you were Satan worshipper and everything else because of the pentagram and everything else, he was like, no, that's Jose. That's his thing. It wasn't me. I'm a Christian. You know, I'm scared. He tried to say he was scared of him, that he'd been forced into it. He didn't, he was forced into using the belt on her. He didn't do anything else. He's quite a dopey lad. But I have no sympathy. Don't get me wrong. I've watched the interrogation. There's no sympathy there whatsoever. He's trying to cover himself over and over again. Okay? So they're both charged. And they're both charged as adults. Okay? They are going for capital murder. Apparently with capital murder, it's only if the murder is done in the process of another crime. So the prosecution tried to prove that because she tried to run, which both of them had said she did try to do, it would have classed as kidnapping. And obviously they classed, because she was so compromised with, you know, the alcohol she'd had and everything else, that she wouldn't have been able to consent to the, you know, the intimacy that they'd had. That sounds terrible, doesn't it? I'm trying to say it in the best. She wouldn't have been able to consent to what happened. The defence obviously says she could, because of the photo. She was definitely it's consensual. Prosecution is saying she was too compromised to be able to consent to anything. So there was a lot going on. Okay. But the trial goes ahead. Jose's trial goes ahead first. I can't imagine what it was like for the family when the autopsy photos were shown. And, you know, when they were talking about what happened to her that night, I just can't. I can't. And it said that they did have to leave the court several times. But Jose is found guilty of capital murder. He couldn't go for the death penalty because obviously that his age. But he's sentenced to life with a minimum sentence of a minimum of 40 years before he can apply for parole. I mean, I don't, why? Just leave him in there. Just leave him in there. Be capable of doing that at 16, 17. And there's no remorse being shown by Jose. He's gone from claiming it was the devil and that. I think he's been in a recent interview, this was 10 years ago, but in a recent interview, he's come out and said that it wasn't him at all and that it was Victor, you know, the dopey one. It was him and someone else. He had no part of it. Right, okay. So he's still not showing any remorse, not admitting to it at all. He's just, And then Victor, he had his trial. He was also found guilty. Also given life, minimum of 40 years. So they were both given the same, which I agree with. I agree with. Whether he only held the belt around her neck or not, is neither here nor there. You either watched it or you took part. You were there. And not only that, it was Victor that got rid of the screwdriver and his belt. He did that. Said he had to because Jose made him. When you see Jose, he's a pig. Do you know who he looks like? I don't know if you've ever heard of the Island Boys. It's who reminded me of one of the Island Boys. They did like a fad song back in 2020, and you know, I thought they were going to be famous. They were twins, and it's just ridiculous. But I'm not talking about the hairstyle that they had, but he just looked like them and was as slim as one of them. Probably not even as tall. And yet Victor was quite a stocky little fella. So, you know, it's questionable. And I think the prosecution did say, or the arresting officer did say, you know, you could have fought him. You could have stopped that. Look at the size of you to him. You know, so there was that question. So I don't know whether he was fully complicit in it, fully took part in it, or he stood back and watched it. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Like I say, the only reason the death penalty was taken off the table was because they were under 18. But otherwise, I think not only would they have gone for it, I think they'd have got it. I genuinely do. Apparently, the jury didn't take very long at all coming to their conclusion of guilty for both of them. Okay. The family, the aunt did do a witness statement, you know, when the family, not a witness statement, an impact statement. She's very angry, very, very angry, quite understandably. Saved most of her wrath for Jose. And just basically said, you know, she'll Corriann's still with us, and she'll, you know, in spirit, she'll be going to heaven. You will be going to hell. You know, she was very, very angry. Her dad, he's just trying to, still got to, you know, their siblings, Corriann's siblings to raise. You know, he's just trying to, I just can't imagine. I haven't heard much about how the mum reacted, Tiffany. But I just, to be honest, I don't think I would be able to speak either. So I just, my heart breaks for the family. My heart breaks for her dad, that the last he saw of her was on bad terms, which was just a normal teenage, back and forth with your parents. You know, it's a shame that she left that night. You know, so it was a course of events that was, you know, it could have been, had it been stopped or gone another way at any point, you know, maybe. But, you know, I suppose, how would he ever be able to get on and look after his other two children if he kept blaming himself over it, you know? It's just, there's no blame. The only blame there can be is to the monsters that did it, you know. Just absolutely awful. And you know that Jose, he bragged to everyone, you know. It wasn't just his sister he told. Apparently he told his brother. He, you know, a lot of his family knew. He told friends. He'd written letters while he was in prison, bragging about it, calling her that hoe, you know. Just still, even afterwards, talking about it in the most derogatory terms. Victor, I think he was just too stupid to show any remorse. Not, I'm saying stupid like it gives him some sort of get out. There's not. I'm honestly not saying that. But would he have gone down that route if he hadn't met Jose? I don't know. Would Jose have gone down that route without meeting Victor? I think so. So, I don't know. But that was the Brutal Corriann Cervantes story. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining me. Horrific story. It genuinely is. But thank you for joining me. As I've said, I'm here every Thursday at 8 p.m. It'd be lovely if you could join. Otherwise, it will get uploaded onto my pre-recorded at the weekend. So thank you so much for joining me. I'm over on the TikTok, which is Jess Rose 5472. And other than that, that's it. Thank you again. Take care. Thank you.